But my question for you is, what is your dream? What is the thing that you have been communicating and talking about for so long that you actually hadn't stepped out and done yet? What is the thing that's propelling you in the directions that you're going in and causing you to make an impact in the way that you need to make an impact? But that comes down to this real question of, do you understand what it takes to step up to the plate and actually move forward, or actually overcome the thing that has caused you to feel like you are in despair? And let me tell you something. There is an amount of grief that you need to go through. There's an amount of processing that you need to go through. There's an amount of hope you need to reassure yourself in. But trust me, if you know anything about life, is that you have made some decisions that have gotten you to this far, getting you this far. That some of the decisions that you made, some of the goals you went after, some of the things that you've accomplished. Hi, everybody. Lee Scott here. Thank you for watching or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee, where we talk about life, leadership, and legacy. We want to help you discover your capacity and level of leadership. I'm so excited that you are here today because I'm really going to talk about something that is impactful for me. But if you have not done it yet, go and subscribe to Leading on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. And before I even get into my topic today, I want to kind of get ahead of the game by giving my definition of leadership right here instead of generally a little bit later. So I'm going to give my definition of leadership. We talk about leadership on here on Leading with Lee. So let me give it to you really quickly. I believe that leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, personal processes, and organizations in that direction. I believe that leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, personal processes, and organizations in that direction. As you well know, here on Leading, I talk about topics that are quite general in some sense. But today, I'm going to be more poignant than I've ever been on Leading, because this is something I'm experiencing right now, and I'm going to share about it today. And so today, I want to talk about this idea of loss. I just recently lost my job, and these are some lessons from loss, Now, I want to do some defining real quick, because I think we have to understand this idea of loss and what actually is loss. You maybe ask yourself, what is that? What does it mean to lose things? And so this is research, and Webster defines loss as the fact or process of losing something or someone. The state or feeling of grief when deprived of someone or something of value. Now, I'm going to give you 4 things that I want to highlight today that I've been processing as I've been dealing with losing my job and searching for a new one. But these are some 4 things that I processed and I thought were going to be super helpful for you today as we talk about this particular subject of loss. So here's the 4 things. Number 1, loss can either launch you or break you. Number 2, what you get is what you expect. Number 3, sometimes your best efforts are not enough. And number 4, be authentic in every space that you are in. Now let's do with the first one. Loss can either launch you or break you. I was doing some thought and research. Obviously, I'm experiencing this in real time, but I was doing some research and thinking about this. And if you know anything about eagles, you'll come to know that when eagles get of a certain age, their mothers actually kick them out of the nest. They actually do this vicious thing of kicking them out of the nest. And if you know anything about eagles, you'll know that most eagles' nests are in mountains or on mountain cliffs. And so it is very far down of a drop and fall if you are kicked out of an eagle's nest. And this is something that is pretty direct and sometimes kind of jarring to think about. But 1 or 2 things has to happen in a response to that eagle being kicked out of the nest. Either that eagle is going to fly or that eagle is going to fall to its demise. And one thing I think that I want to point out in this process of the processing things that I'm going through and and talking about this idea of loss is that one thing I'm recognizing is that this is one of those moments that either I'm going to fly and go after things that I really want to go after, or I'm going to fall to my demise. And I don't plan on falling to my demise because of some examples of folks who lost some things, but turn around and responded in a powerful and positive way. We know this great inventor and entrepreneur, and Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, if you didn't know, was actually fired from Apple for a period of time. He actually left the company. They kicked him out because of his ideas and some things that he had been working on. And so the company was like, we're going to go in a new direction. We actually don't want this from you, Steve. We want to go in a different direction, do something different. But he was the brain trust of that organization. We saw how Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team because one of his coaches told him he was not good enough. Michael Jordan was not good enough on a basketball team. The arguably one of the top two greatest players who ever played the game, one of the most transformational players, the most influential players who ever changed the game because of the Jordan brand. I mean, absolutely wild that this was even a consideration. Abraham Lincoln lost about 8 elections before he actually was elected president of the United States. Even right before he ran for president, 2 years before he ran for president, he actually lost the U.S. Senate race to Stephen Douglas. And this is where we get the Lincoln Douglas debates from, the idea of Lincoln Douglas debate. He actually lost that debate, but that propelled him into something different. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her news job at one point in her life because people felt that she was too inquisitive and was emotionally connect with folks. And all of these losses propelled these people into their next. The very thing that actually made them powerful and unique, and we'll talk about it more later, but the actual thing that made them who they were was actually the door that needed to be opened. And as we know, Steve Jobs ended up getting rehired by Apple, and we see all of the brands that we are impacted by today because of that rehiring. We have seen how Michael Jordan went on to have one of the greatest careers in sports history and being undefeated in championship appearances. We saw how Abraham Lincoln went on to become the great emancipator and was hired and actually elected president of the United States, and is probably considered one of the top 5 presidents ever in American history, how he brought the country back together during the Civil War. And then even with Oprah Winfrey, she's gone on to have an incredible career from being one of the greatest talk show hosts ever to having her own network and all so on and so forth. And all these things happened to these individuals, but they understood that their losses was either going to launch them into success or cause them to draw back. And even in the midst of loss, we have to understand and see that a lot of times transitions are necessary. That sometimes you having this blowback, having these things where you failed, having this situation where you actually were trying to move in a direction and something happened and you felt like you couldn't go forward. It had to happen because the only way you can really be impactful in the world is through understanding that you have to lose some stuff. Sometimes your hands are too full for you to get something else. Sometimes your hands have too many things in them to get something else, and you actually need to fail or actually need to lose something in order for you to move to a new thing and in the new direction. And some of you are listening to this and watching this right now. You're asking yourself, well, Lee, that might be true in some ways, and loss is very difficult. And it is. Loss is an extremely difficult thing. I can tell you right now that I'm contemplating a lot of things because I'm trying to think about what is next for me. How can I pay my bills? How can I take care of the things that I need to take care of? How can I ensure that my future is secure? But even in the midst of all of that, I can tell you that it has prepared me for this moment because I recognize that the loss is an opportunity. And I'm telling you right now that your losses are sometimes opportunities for you to reflect and think about how can you be a better productive citizen in the world. Maybe you got too comfortable where you were. Maybe you had gotten complacent where you were. Maybe you had settled in too much and actually are not pursuing the things that you are created to pursue and the things that you have dreamed about. And sometimes we give up on dreams for comfortability. That our comfort actually becomes the thing that prevents us from moving forward because we think that the only way that success can happen in our lives is if we live out somebody else's dream. But my question for you is, what is your dream? What is the thing that you have been communicating and talking about for so long that you actually hadn't stepped out and done yet? What is the thing that's propelling you in the directions that you're going in and causing you to make an impact in the way that you need to make an impact? But that comes down to this real question of, do you understand what it takes to step up to the plate and actually move forward, or actually overcome the thing that has caused you to feel like you are in despair? And let me tell you something. There is an amount of grief that you need to go through. There's an amount of processing that you need to go through. There's an amount of hope you need to reassure yourself in. But trust me, if you know anything about life, is that you have made some decisions that have gotten you to this far, getting you this far. That some of the decisions that you made, some of the goals you went out, some of the things that you've accomplished has gotten you here, and you should not allow yourself to get stuck and believe that you can't do anything else new. So I hope that as we're talking about this topic today, that you will recognize that in the midst of loss, you still can do something great. In the midst of having setbacks, you still can move forward. My second point is, what you get is what you expect. Now, I've actually been thinking about this one a little bit because earlier in the season of leading, I did an episode that was called Not What I Expected. I hope you go back and watch it, because I think it was a really good episode, and I really articulate about expectation and really talk about the idea of expectation. And generally, this is something that we expect from other people. But sometimes as leaders, whether you believe it or not, I believe every person has a capacity and level of leadership, but we don't think about what people expect of us. Sometimes we don't even consider that when we're leading teams or engaging people, that the people that we lead have expectations. The people that we are engaged in conversations with and leading and talking to actually have things that they are requiring of us, and we have to be sensitive and know that it's going to come to a head. About a week or so ago, last weekend, I had the opportunity of going to my church here in Jackson, Mississippi. My pastor, Pastor Kevin Reed, has been doing a leadership teaching. He's been doing a leadership track where he's been talking about 4 weeks. He's been articulating some values. And I thought his conversation about expectations was really powerful. And I want to share some of the notes that he had from that and give you some of the ideas that I thought really were impactful. He says that as a leader, you must know that those who follow desire to be led, and that comes with expectation. I'm going to say it again. As a leader, you must know that those who follow desire to be led, and that comes with expectation or expectations. In other words, for me as a leader, if I'm in a position of leadership, the people that are on my team actually need me to lead them. They need me to have a certain perspective. They need me to know where we're going, because when I know where we're going, they are able to trust that we are going to meet our expectation. We're going to go and do something that's impactful because we have articulated that this is what we're trying to do. We've articulated that this is what is going to happen as a result of our team working out. And oftentimes leaders expect things of the people that they lead. But the reverse is also true. And he gave these 6 things that he thought was really powerful for us to consider when it comes down to what followers expect from leaders. He said followers, number 1, expect to be guided. You know, one thing that I think is very true is that a part of your leadership development and a part of being an effective leader is actually guiding people through process. There are going to be people on your team who may not have all the requisite skills to fulfill something that you're asking them to do. But as a leader, having the humility to say, hey, I'm going to get in here and try to help you figure out how to make this happen is a powerful thing, because it really tells the people that you are there to walk with them. We have all been to museums, or most of us have been to places where there's been safaris or museums or exhibits, and they always have a guide in the exhibit. The reason why they have guides is because sometimes those guides can reveal things to us that we may not see or even suspect in an environment because that person has already been there. This is their whole job. This is their whole thing. And so what your followers are expecting you to do is actually be their guide, is to be a beacon light for them to know where they could go to be effective at what they do. The second thing that followers are expecting is to have resources provided. Let me tell you something about leading people is that when you don't give people all that they need to do something, it affects their ability to do the work and actually affects their ability to fulfill the promises or fulfill the mandates that you put on them. And I know some people say, well, you need to learn how to make something out of nothing. You need to learn to be creative. We need to learn to be effective. But one thing I think that leaders have to have the humility about, especially when it relates to this topic, is that we must recognize that it is our job to empower our people and give them the resources and tools necessary for them to be the most successful. And when we don't give them resources, when we don't give them things that they need, it actually makes them less effective because they are not well equipped to do the job that we're asking of them. My question for you as a leader, are you giving the people that you lead everything that they need to succeed? Are you asking them questions? Hey, what do you need from me? What is something that I can empower you with to make sure that you are doing the best possible thing for this team and for your life and how you show up in this organization? The third thing he brought up is followers are expecting to be protected. Now, this one is a real big one. And I think that sometimes we miss this because in our culture, it is more advantageous, especially as organizational leaders, to be more concerned about the brand than the people. And mind you, I want to make it very clear that you as a leader, you have to also be very aware that if somebody is detrimental to the success of your organization, right? You have to be cognizant of that fact. You can't have people that are on your team that are causing the organization to fail because of their misbehavior or because of their lack of competency or their lack of ability to be willing to learn, or if they're affecting just the culture of that organization. If they're a negative person, they're affecting what you're doing and causing the organization not to move forward. It is legitimate to remove them. Like, that makes sense. But the flip side is, if people are teachable, if people are willing to come alongside and do what they need to do, they need to feel like you will protect them. You will ensure that nothing comes against them, that you will ensure that they feel covered, that you ensure that they can feel like, hey, this person has my back. This person is going to stand in the gap. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but that is important for you as a leader, that the people that you lead feel protected. Number 4, they need to feel like the followers are expecting to be prepared. Now, I kind of mentioned earlier, this relates to guidance, but here's the thing about preparedness. Preparedness is not just about resources and things. Preparedness is, hey, I'm trying to check in with you to make sure that everything you need to go into this situation, you have it. And I've been in situations where I didn't feel the most prepared when I was doing something, where I asked a lot of questions, I asked for a lot of research, I asked for certain things, but I did not feel that I was being prepared to do well, because at the end of the day, it was more about the results and not about whether or not I could get the results the best way possible. And sometimes getting results is not the goal. Getting your results can't be always the goal for you as a leader. It has to be about the people that you are empowering to do something, knowing that they can do it well. Followers are expecting you to prepare them. One thing I've been reading a lot about is how presidents organize themselves and how they come into situations. And one thing that's been fascinating is to hear folks who work for different presidents, how they articulate and share how these particular leaders go about doing their work, their workflow, their work style, how they function in meetings, how they delegate responsibility, how they share information. And all of these dynamics we'll get to in a moment, but we'll get to a little bit later. But this is profound because when you're preparing a team, if you come in prepared, if you come in ready to answer questions, if you come in ready to absorb information, if you come in and say, hey, I don't know this answer, but I'm willing to go find out for you, that communicates a lot to your team because now your team knows that my boss has my back. Number 5, followers are expected to be covered. One of the things that leaders have to understand, especially when you have people following you that really, really, really genuinely believe in what you're doing, is it's not about exposing. It's not about making them look bad or reprimanding them in some sense because you think that this is the best way to handle a particular issue. And I get it. Those things are warranted, right? Those things are necessary in some cases. But one of the things that you have to understand in covering is about covering mistakes. Covering is about, hey, I realize this person fell short. I'm not going to expose them. I'm not going to make them look bad. I'm not going to blow it up in their face. I'm not going to cause them to become more down on themselves. I'm going to do everything I can to make them feel covered by me. Make them feel like they can come back and try again. We see this with children. A lot of times children are learning. Children are trying to understand something. Their curiosity drives them to do the things that they're doing. Their curiosity drives them to try to figure out what is the best thing to do in any given situation. They may not know what to do in any given situation, but they'll try to figure it out by doing things. And one thing that we know about children is that they want to feel covered. They want to know that if they fail to do something or get something right, that somebody will come and say, hey, sweetie, I know that you didn't do this right. I know that you failed at this, but here is someone that's going to help you. I'm here to help you. And we want to feel that in our work life. We want to feel that in our careers. We want to feel that in the spaces that we're in, that we are covered, that we do not have to worry about if this is going to work out, that if I fall short, I'm still being empowered to do better. I'm still being empowered to get better. I'm still being empowered to make the better move. I'm still being empowered to go forward. That's what I want to feel. I think all leaders want to experience it. And I think that's important in our discovery of this. And the last thing is, Pastor Kevin said, followers are expecting to be blessed or empowered to excel. One thing I think is important for me, I think a value that's important for me is that I want the people that I'm leading to feel like, man, I've expanded and gotten better because I was on his team. Oh, I've grown so much as a person because I was on this team. I've grown so much in my career, in my understanding, in my knowledge, in who I know, what I know, how I go about doing things because I was connected and locked in and working with Lee. I actually got the opportunity to be a better person because I was connected to the work that Lee was doing. And he said this, and I thought was very powerful. He said, in return, this is a reflection of your role as a leader. These 6 things are what people are expecting of you as a leader. The people that are on your team, whether you may not be leading a team of workers, you might be leading your family, you might be leading with your partner, you might be leading your friends, you might be impacting people that's in your space. You have to understand, in order for that to work, that they are expecting something from you. And sometimes as leaders, we love to have very strong, clear, decisive ideas of how we should lead the people that we're leading. But trust me, they are expecting some things from you too. They're expecting you to operate in a particular way that is reflective of what you say that you believe. They're expecting you to be effective at what you do. And sometimes you have to have the humility to say, you know what, I might have not done this, or might have not gone about this a certain particular way that might not be that effective, but it gets to my point. You get what you expect. If you did not prepare your team to be successful, you're going to get what you expect. If you did not guide them in the ways they need to be guided, you're going to get what you expect. If you did not give them the resources necessary to be effective, you're going to give what you expect. If they don't feel protected, you're going to get what you expect. If they don't feel prepared or covered, you should expect them not to fulfill the thing that you want them to fulfill the way that you want them to fulfill it. If they don't feel blessed or empowered to excel, your expectation should be that it's not going to be what you think, because you did not do the things that were necessary. You get what you expect. You get what you bring into a situation. You get what you actually implore people to do. And a lot of times we do a lot of imploring with our mouths, but we don't implore people with our actions. Can the people you lead ask of you certain things? Can they really depend on you to have their back? Can they depend on you to do the things that are necessary to make them better? Because that's what matters in these situations. And that's what we're going to continue to talk about after this message. I'll be right back, and check this out.
Hi, everybody. Lee here, and I want to give some information to you. Do you need someone to host an event or come and speak at your event? You can now book yours truly. Book me for your event by visiting www.leeascott.com. I am so excited to connect with you and do work with you. Much love, and let's get started.
And we are back. It's been really great to share with you about this topic of loss and things that I've learned in the last week or so of having lost something that was really critical to my life with work. But I hope that you've been encouraged to think about this in a different way, especially from a leadership perspective, but also think about how you show up in the world. And so I got 2 more points, and I hope that these are encouraging to you, but also give you a better understanding of how you can make a difference in the spaces that you're in. So my third point today is sometimes your best effort is not enough. Now, I know that's difficult to hear, but sometimes this is just a part of life and a reality. And I actually had an experience even a few weeks ago where I had been applying for a job, and this great organization that I'm super excited to have the CEO of here on leading, and I would love to try to interview him. But I realized that the particular position that he needed to be fulfilled, I didn't have the requisite skills to fulfill that job. I realized very quickly that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, though I love the organization, I think the organization is incredible, and I think what they do is super amazing, I did not have what he needed in order for this to be successful. And sometimes as a leader, you have to have the humility to recognize that you may not have what it takes to do the work in a certain space. And it doesn't make that you mean that you're less of a person. It doesn't mean that you're not, that you're ineffective or you can't be great at something. It just may be that you're not actually what they need in that space. We see it all the time in sports. All the time we see how teams will trade players because they recognize we're trying to get to this spot. And if we trade this player, we actually might be better. We saw it happen a few years ago with the LA Rams and the Detroit Lions. They traded quarterbacks, Matt Stafford and Jared Goff. Jared Goff had led the team to the Super Bowl. He had been a very productive quarterback for that team. And he had helped the Rams actually turn themselves around and be really productive and make some real impact. But they traded quarterbacks, and it seemed as if when they traded quarterbacks and got a few other pieces on that team, on that Rams team, they were able to win the Super Bowl a few years ago. And that makes sense because sometimes it may have not been a fit. It may have been the wrong timing or the wrong season. And sometimes it may be some other things. And I have a few things that I think could be reasons why it may not work. And I got 3 things. Number 1, maybe values. You may have a different value system than the organization you're trying to work or be a part of. And so you're asking, so what is values? Lee, what are values? Why is this topic important? Well, values is defined as the regard that something is held to desire the importance, worth, or usefulness of something, or a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. So a value piece might be for you in work. It might be diversity might be a value for you. Equity might be a value for you. It may be that they have paid sick leave because you're a mother and you want to make sure that you have your kids are protected. It may be that your faith is valued in your work. That it may be that at the place of employment, you want to ensure that they actually empower and take care of seniors, right? These may be values that you bring to your work life, and it may not align with that business, but it doesn't mean that your values are wrong. It's just that this is not the same value system as the place you're trying to work. And that can be okay. That's just fine. It's not a negative. It's a reality of life. You just have a different value system, right? Another thing that could be different of why it may not work, it may be work philosophy. How you do something may be different. Now, I don't think that there is a perfect work philosophy or perfect way to do something. I think we should all be open to the different systems and how that works and how we can make a difference. But the way you work might be different from that organization. For example, if you like to work 12-hour shifts during the day, and the business that you're trying to apply for may only like people to be at work for 6 hours, your work philosophy is different, right? The way you do things are very different. And we have to understand that even organizations, every organization is different. Every organization's approach is different. Every organization's considerations are different. Every organization has something that drives what they do. And I think as a leader, you got to recognize whether you are in a management position or a follower position, you got to recognize if it's not in alignment, it's okay. If it's not in alignment, that's fine. Because you have a particular thing that you're expecting in work. We just talked about expectation, right? The third thing is it might be work. It may just simply be the work cultural dynamic. Listen, I've worked in corporate America. I've worked in nonprofit world. Those dynamics are very different. How those organizations operate are very different. I worked for a chain business. I worked for a franchise business. I worked for a multi-campus organization. I worked for an organization that went from small to growing into a bigger organization. Those growing pains are difficult. In every space I've worked in, those dynamics are so different. And when I was doing some research, I found that there are about 9 different types of work structures or dynamics that we see in organizations. So I want to give you those 9 things, and then talk a little bit more about that as it relates to your work and how that could affect why you may or may not be fitting. Number 1 is that a work structure is a functional work structure. Most of us have probably experienced this. It allows for high degrees of specialization from employees and is easily scalable should the organization grow. For example, a group of marketers together in one department. We have all experienced a functional structure within our work dynamic that these group of people are doing a particular thing, and this is how this works. This is how this business or organization works. Number 2 is a product-based structure. It comprises of multiple small functional structures. Each division within a divisional structure has its own marketing team, its own sales team, and so on and so forth. There is a big department that has smaller departments in that department. And then those small departments has its own team built around itself and is actually able to get things done. Number 3, a market-based structure. An organization that has products or services that are unique to a specific market segments, meaning the only reason why this organization exists or the structure of the organization is what it is because they are selling a specific thing. They're going after a target market. It's like inherent in the name, they're going after a certain segment of people. They're not trying to do anything else. They're just going after a particular group of individuals. Number 4, geographical divisional structure. Best suited to organizations that need to be near sources of supply or customers, i.e. for like deliveries or on-site support. So in other words, these are organizations that many of us have experienced where the reason why they are there is because they need access to the folks that they're trying to serve or the supplies that they need. They need access to their customers or supplies, or they need to be able to get to things quickly. Number 5, process-based. The end-to-end flow of different processes considers not only the activities employees perform, but also have those different activities interact with each other. So in other words, they're having teams do different things, and that at some point, they're all going to come together and interface with one another. They're all going to be affected by one another. This is a process-based structure. Number 6, a matrix structure. Doesn't follow any traditional hierarchical model. It can provide both flexibility and more balanced decision-making. In other words, it has 2 chains of command instead of 1. So there are 2 teams functioning in different ways. They're going simultaneously. They're functioning simultaneously, but at some way, shape, form, or fashion, they're able to interface and engage one another, because it's not built on, hey, this is the regular chain of command. It has to go through this person to get to that person. It's not that. It is functioning in a way that allows people to go out a lot of different ways. And it allows multiple people to make the decision. Number 7, a circular structure. Leaders or executives in a circular organization aren't seen as sitting atop of the organization, sending directives down the chain of command. Instead, they are at the center of the organization, spreading their vision outwardly. So obviously, it's stated in the definition that these type of leaders are, or these type of people who are engaged in leadership or their structure, this is how they function. They are a part of the team. They're not above the team. They're actually engaged in the work that the team is doing. Number 8, flat structure. Limits the level of management, so all staff are only a few steps away from leadership. It says it probably one of the most detailed, and it also is thought to be that employees are more productive in an environment where there is less hierarchical related pressure. So it's flat, but everybody's on the same level. We're a team. It's collaborative in nature. And the last one is a network structure. It's one company itself working with another to share resources, or if those companies have multiple locations and different functions and leadership. We've seen this happen in any business and any organization. So these are the types of organizational structures that we are encountering. But no matter what the difference is, you may be coming into this environment used to working in a product-based work dynamic, but this organization might be a flat dynamic. If that does not align with you and you can't adapt to that, or you can't work in that environment, it just is what it is. And I know sometimes it's hard to hear because we want to say that we're adaptable, but I promise you, everybody doesn't have all the same skills to work in an environment. We can't do it. It's not healthy and productive that you can do everything, because that means you don't need anybody. And so you have to know enough about yourself. You have to be aware to understand how this works. And my last point, and this is the last point, and I hope that it encourages you the most, is number 4, be authentic in every space that you're in. If there's one thing I've learned over the last few years, is that I have to be authentic. I cannot pretend to be somebody else. I can only be Lee Andrew Scott II. I can only show up in the world as myself. I can only be who I am. And that's the thing I think that would cause things to be attracted to me is that I'm being authentically me. I was listening to a podcast just recently. It's called Majority 54, and the host on there is this guy named Jason Kander and his co-host Ravi Gupta. And they were talking about some of the authenticity of certain politicians here in America, how these very individuals are pretty authentic to who they are. Though you may or may not agree with them, they actually show up in the world the way that they present themselves. They are the same all the time in every single space. I'm not gonna call no names, but call any names. But these politicians, whether you love them or hate them, they are who they are. And one thing I think is important for you is that if you have to conform in order to be accepted, then there might be a problem on where you are. Now, I'm not talking about being disrupted. I'm not talking about not being willing to grow. I'm not talking about not being teachable, because I think every person needs to be teachable. What I am talking about is that at the core of who you are, you're being told that you shouldn't be something, then we have a problem. And this is something that is shared in this clip that I want to give to you. At Stanford University, they actually, at their business school, their school of management, they actually had this wonderful woman come to talk to the students. Her name is Cent Marshall. She is actually the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. I hope that this clip impacts you and encourages you. And I want you to hear what she had to say on this particular subject of authenticity. Check this out.
Okay, so let me give you some advice. Let me tell you some things that I want. And she said, I just left a magazine on your desk, so when you get back to work, you'll see a magazine. She said, I think it was a Black Enterprise magazine. She said, there are all these black people on the cover. They're wearing white, and the ladies have short hair, so I think you would look great in white, and I think you would look great in a short haircut. And she starts describing this haircut. And I'm thinking, what does this have to do with the job? But she, in her mind, was coaching me and giving me some, ideas on how to step into this officer role. Then she said, and you're going to have to change your name. You can't be Cent. No Cent. You have to be Cindy or Cynthia, because nobody knows what a Cent is. Nobody ever heard of that.
Wow.
Well, I heard of it. I've been Cent my whole life. And most of the people that I grew up with, black people named Cynthia, with the exception of my sister had a friend named Cindy Holloway. That's the only black Cindy I knew, okay? So I knew people as Cent, but she didn't. So she wanted me to change my name. And so then she said, and people are in your office all the time because, that's a place where people just want to come. They feel like they can talk to you and all that. You're going to have to stop talking to all these people. And so and then, of course, what she wanted me to wear. So she literally just started giving me this whole picture that was not me. Now, coaching is one thing, because we're all, we all need to be coached. Because sometimes you're in environments that are new, the culture is new, all that. You need to know how to show up. But then when you start talking like this, it's getting kind of crazy. But here's where it kind of went over the edge. She says, and you have to stop using the word blessed. You have to use the word lucky. I said, well, what if I don't think I'm lucky? And she says, I said, what if I don't think I'm lucky? Did I think I'm blessed? She goes, no. No churchy kind of words. You can't do any of that. Wow. And that's when I said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I said, I need you to help me figure out how to tell the company no, that I'm not going to accept this officer promotion, because my sense is you are fundamentally trying to change who I am. And you know what? When my first week in the company, I had a boss who made me get rid of my red shoes and my braids. And I came home and had to stay up all night with my family taking down my braids. And here it is some 19, 20 years later, and this is still going on. But the difference is I'm a different person. And so I'm not going to accept this. And so she helped me come up with the words, because my biggest concern is I don't want to lose my current job. Like, I got a big job and I'm doing great. I'm taking care of my family. So I don't want to lose my current job, but I'm not going to accept this because you're asking me to be somebody else. So she came up with the words. And so she said, okay, I agree with you, because I guess I wasn't sophisticated enough or something, I don't know. And so, but pretty much that's what she was saying. And so that's where I left it. And then a few minutes later, her boss called me, and then the chairman of AT&T, Ed Whitaker, called me. And he started off, he said, Cent, and he put the emphasis on the T. And he said, girl, let's start this all over again. I heard what happened. And he went and described me to a T. And he said, that is the person who we just promoted to be an officer, that is the person who we want to walk in the doors tomorrow. You don't need to change a thing. He said, will you accept the offer to be an officer of this corporation? And I said, absolutely.
Wasn't that so powerful? I mean, she really, really articulates that in the midst of all these things that she had accomplished, someone was trying to get her to be something that she wasn't. And one thing that you have to understand about yourself, you have to know the quality that you bring to a space. You have to know the value that you bring to a space. You have to know who you are and what you do. And when you do that, you're able to show up in the world in a powerful way, because we must recognize that our authenticity is our greatest superpower. That the way you make a difference in the world is you being authentic. I talk about that all the time here on Leading, because I think we are full of a world. We're in a world that's full of people that's trying to duplicate everybody else's efforts. You're trying to be like everybody else, and even similar and same. And I've talked about this before, how similar and same is not the same thing. Because something is similar does not make it the same. It does not mean that it's exactly the same. Just because I come from the same city as somebody and have a similar experience as someone doesn't mean we're the same person. And you have to know this to be true in your leadership and in your development. You got to know that what I bring to a space is impactful. That I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be unique. My confidence is what differentiates me. Who I am when I come into an environment is what differentiates me. It is not all this other stuff that doesn't matter. It is this. It is me being who I am truly being. It's me showing up as myself. And if it does not work, that's okay. It doesn't mean that the organization is bad. It doesn't mean that the people that you were working with is bad. It just means that you are not for that. And so my encouragement to you as I reflect on my own personal loss as far as my job is concerned, and my encouragement to you as encouragement to myself, is that this is an opportunity for you to move forward. This is an opportunity for you to reset, to really rethink how you show up in the world. Rethink, what is it that you are doing? How can you make the world a better place? I hope that you were inspired today to really think about loss in a new way. That loss is actually an opportunity, as I said earlier. That loss is actually a way that we can see something new. And many of us have had loss in different areas of our life, whether it be a family member, whether it be resources, whether it be connections. We all have experienced this difficult thing called loss. But the question for you as I end is, how will you respond? Will you draw back? Will you stop being authentic? Will you recognize that you may not be the right fit? Will you understand that there might be a differentiation and expectation? Will you come into an environment expecting your leaders to give you what you need to be successful? Or when you, as a leader, you recognize that the people that you lead have an expectation of, will you do that? You only can answer that question. And I hope that you were inspired to answer it today. I'll see you next time here on Leading. Much love. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. If you have not done it yet, subscribe on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. If you want to get more information and connect with me, visit me at www.leeascott.com or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. So, thank you for watching. Much love, and let's get started.